and welcome to Fantasy Focus Football. My name is Daniel Dopp, here with my two best friends, Fields Yates and Mike Clay. They promised me that the shirts they're wearing are not the same color, although I'm colorblind and it feels like you guys are trolling me on purpose. They look exactly the same to me.
No, mine's like a pink, yours is like an orange. So I can.
It is, stop it. It is not pink and orange.
Are you actually colorblind?
I am actually colorblind. I did not find out until I went into the Air Force. They had me do like a test before they were trying to figure out what job I could have, and they did that like circular dot test. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
So like they have, you guys have never done a colorblind test? You might be colorblind too. I may be opening up your world as it works. Okay.
So.
If you've never taken a colorblind test, you should. But that's when I found out. I was actually like eliminated from like 85% of the jobs in the Air Force.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was colorblind.
Anyway, I like your purple jacket.
Thank you so much.
Your black pants.
We are so excited. It's going to be a very fun show. I do want to say this, though. A little bit of shame coming into the studio today, Mike. I let Field know that I've been trying to eat more before the show. Like, you know, as a part of breakfast. Breakfast is a big part of it, but I've been a big non-breakfast guy almost my entire life.
Makes no sense to me.
I don't know how.
And I told him that I ate yogurt on the way in, which I do. I try to eat yogurt. Rosie makes sure that I have some in the fridge. And he's like, wow, look at you. Not just eating, like, something for breakfast, but eating healthy. Meanwhile, the shame inside of me when I had also bought a Boston cream donut that was sitting next to it, and I couldn't say to Field, I'm not that healthy, Field. Thank you for making me feel bad about it.
I just was legit surprised because what would you say is the average number of vegetables you consume in a year?
Oh, I eat a handful of vegetables, but they're like the same ones over and over. Like I eat little kid vegetables. Like if you like slice up cucumbers, like really, you know, like I can do stuff like that. Carrots, I love carrots. I like, peppers. So
okay. All right.
I've got a handful. I've got like
sprouts.
3 or 4 go-tos.
I try to make you try sprouts. Good sprouts with bacon in them, and you
Rosie makes those, and they are
sprouts?
fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that would work. When you say sprouts, I was thinking like
bean sprouts.
Oh no.
More like the stringy sprouts.
Yeah.
Like sometimes people put on sandwiches as like sort of a topping, in substitution for lettuce.
That doesn't do it for me.
I eat lunch with Daniel usually on Wednesdays, and he just like has a normal lunch and then just like a bag of candy. I'm like, I don't know how you do that.
It's a Rice Krispie treat usually. Like we try to like they're
or just
they're
a bag of candy.
Here.
You go to where my kids go. The only time I've ever been at that section where you can
have like a little
candy is with my kids when they visit.
Yeah.
You and my kids are the only ones that go to there.
And Damien Woody, I think I've seen like Damien
that's
get
right.
some with me as well. Like
he likes his gummy bears Sunday mornings.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very famous spot here on the ESPN Cafe. All right, listen, we got a very big show today. We obviously have Thursday Night Football that we are going to preview. We're going to dive into a number of games and talk about some start-sit conversations that we have, as well as a quick gut check. But before we get to either one of those things, don't forget today's show is presented by Boost Mobile.
Yeah, it is.
As it is always. And we're going to kick things off with the opening drive.
Speaking of kicking things off, just having those footballs teed up there makes me want to kick off.
Yeah, right?
I have a question for you guys before we. So, Mike, to Mike's point, do you guys watch? I'm assuming you guys watch College Game Day at least sometimes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Great show, iconic show, maybe the best show in ESPN's history. And I love the thing they do every Saturday now, where Pat McAfee will bring a student from the student section, and they'll go try to kick a field goal from what seems like not that far of a distance, and yet they rarely ever make the kick. What would be your confidence level if I was like, Mike, you got to drill a 25-yard field goal right now?
25? That might be too far. I don't know. I probably can get like 1 or 2 decent ones off, but I'm going to mess. It's like golfing, right? Like I'm going to just send one way over there.
He's never hit it. Pat is trying to make you guys rich. Let Pat make you rich. And you're not going to do it. They're just denying greatness.
I think I could maybe consistently do it from like the 10. 15 starts feeling like it's pushing it. 25, I'm putting my entire leg into it, and I got no accuracy whatsoever.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
What about you then, Field, if you're so confident?
You know what? Honestly, I'm not really – at this stage of my life, I'm not one to brag about my potential athletic prowess. I learned the hard way about a month and a half ago to just shut up and just, like, do what they tell you to do. Like, don't try to be a hero.
That was before you got hurt, too, when we kicked his rear end in the 40.
That's true. That's true.
And we beat him in the obstacle course, too. I'm just saying.
No big deal. Sorry.
Then we crushed him in the free throws. At that point, he was just like, I'm going to pretend I hurt my shoulder.
I'm going to pretend so I didn't have to do the free
throws. I can't do basketball and mini golf and all that.
Yeah, that's so good.
Less than a week away until the sling comes off, though. I'm pumped about it.
All right.
Oh, I'm pumped. We're all pumped for you, man.
We could return. We should go back to the Bahamas then and
finish
the events.
Exactly.
No, you got to finish the events. That's the only reason we're going. It's for work.
Go back, finish the events, and then redraft all of our teams.
Yeah, that works for me.
We just have this video on standby.
Yes, of course we do.
I made sure.
Of course we do.
Yeah. You're such a jerk.
All right, so let's talk about 2 big topics quickly off the top of the show. We get word that Davante Adams very likely not going to play in this game, which kind of fits the mold with what we were probably thinking after we heard some of those comments that he was requesting to be traded. I want to save the Davante conversation for just a minute. We obviously heard that from Adam Schefter. Understanding this, just for this week for fantasy managers, are you moving up either Jacoby Myers or the guy that we talked about yesterday, Tre Tucker, in your rankings?
Both have been moved up for me already. Yeah, they're both borderline top, I want to say 35 to 40 options for me this week. They do play Denver, which is a little bit imposing,
Exactly
right, Mike?
yeah.
So do we think they'll get a shadow on either of those players?
No, I don't think they'll shadow. What we saw last week was DJ Turner, their fourth receiver, moved into the slot, and Myers played more on the outside. So you have Myers and Tucker on the outside. I don't think Surtain's going to follow one specific. If he does, probably Myers, right? He's probably the guy that would get that respect. But I would not be shocked if Surtain just plays the side. You see that sometimes with shadow corners. If there's no clear, definitive number one, it might not matter to them if he's on Tucker or Myers. So more concern for Myers from that department. But the problem is Denver overall has been elite so far defensively against the opposing passing game. So I'm not super optimistic about them. I don't think either is a lineup lock. I would lean a little toward Myers just because we've seen it from him for so long. And Tucker only has a few big games so far in his career. But I'm with you. I mean, Myers, on the wide receiver 3 conversation, Tucker, a deep league flex.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. And obviously, Brock Bowers is a start at the tight end spot, given what the nature of the tight end position has been.
You have no choice.
Yeah, it's been a down couple of weeks for him, but I still think, based on the state of the position, he's still a starter.
What do you do then? If you've got Davante Adams, or if you're somebody that is maybe in a good spot with your league, is now the time to potentially try and trade for Davante before you even know where he's going because you might be able to get him at a discount, or do you want to wait and see where he ends up before you put in any trade offers?
So let's put a couple of things out here into the ether right now. This hamstring injury, I do believe, from what I have been told, is real. This is not
a trade me hamstring injury.
Correct. This is now. Do I think that if he stays with the Raiders, the recovery will be prolonged relative to if he got traded tomorrow? Yes. But I don't think if he was traded right now to the New York Jets, he would be playing on Sunday. I don't believe that based on what I have been able to gather.
Okay.
But what's so interesting here is that let's sort of evaluate a couple of the options, and I want to focus specifically on the Jets. If Davante Adams were a Jet in the next 2 weeks, do you believe his overall value is stock up, stock way up, stock neutral, stock down, stock way down? Where would you guys stand? Because I think it would go stock up. Not stock way up, but stock up. What do you think?
Let me ask you this first. Where would you consider him now? Let's say that we're comparing like where he would be if he just played for the Raiders tomorrow.
Somewhere around like the 15th to 18th most valuable receiver.
I think it would be a little higher.
Yeah,
I think it would be closer to maybe like a back-end wide receiver 1.
Correct.
I know Garrett Wilson's there, and he's going to be a factor no matter what. But Adams is Rodgers' guy. Like he's going to get him the ball a ton. And it might take a couple weeks, but at some point he's going to be pushing 10, 11, 12 targets. Yeah, well, you're not so sure about it.
I'm not so sure it'll take a couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
That's
fair. Totally fair.
They are in lockstep. These guys obviously know each other backwards and forwards. So.
My biggest concern if Davante Adams goes to the Jets is that it just craters Alan Lazard's value as the wide receiver.
Good point. You raise a good point there, Daniel. I would say this. There is a corner of the NFL that does believe that it's going to be the Jets. Like that's where this is all a lot of noise that will eventually result in Davante Adams going to the Jets. Now, there obviously are other considerations. If the Saints make a better offer, then you're the Raiders. You have to do what's best for your franchise.
Well, it's not a coincidence that it's like he's choosing between his two best friends.
Derek Carr and of course Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback he played with in college, and then with the Raiders, and then the quarterback that he played with for a long time in Green Bay. There are other teams as well that could get into the mix. Is there a spot that you guys say to yourself, that's like the nuclear option? Like if he goes there, that's realistic, not the Chiefs. It's realistic that you're like, if he goes there, I think I'd have him as like a top 8 wide receiver play.
I think the one that really jumps out, I saw some speculation about it today, was Buffalo.
Yeah, Buffalo's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
I mean, if he goes there, again, who's blocking him from being a 30% target share player or higher?
I love me some Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman, who, by the way,
Even
Coleman,
there,
kind of an interesting stock-up player this week. I'll make mention. Keon Coleman.
Oh, yeah, I think we're going to
talk about him a little bit later in the show.
Yeah, but I mean, again, none of them guys are in the way of Adams. Like, at least in New York, you're like, okay, well, we have Garrett Wilson, who's, you want about the chemistry there. He has a quarter of the targets going his way so far this season. I'm going to talk about him in a little bit too. But also Mike Williams, who's just getting healthier and healthier and becoming a bigger part of that offense and isn't going to completely disappear. So Buffalo is one of them spots where you're like high-powered offense, no real competition to be that clear number one target.
Yep. That would be the dream for the fantasy managers in us. But I would say that generally, like trading for or trading away Davante Adams, I think you are getting, assuming a reasonable trade is made, I don't like. Let's assume that the person you're trading with or trading with, whether you're getting Davante or trading away Davante, values Davante at about a top 15 wide receiver. I don't think you're getting a major deal or a major discount either way.
Yeah, and by the way, there's other spots where we wouldn't hate, but are not as ideal. You think about Washington, which seems like, again, a logical spot where you can go in and be a clear starter, featured player. But you also have Terry McLaurin, and it's a low-volume passing game. They're going to, whether you like it or not, Jaden Daniels is going to run it 12, 13, 14 times a game, and that's going to take away targets. So even if he has a 30% target share in that offense, that's not the same as in some other high-volume passing games out there.
Don't love it, guys. I just want to see, and I want to know where he's going to go so that I can make my plans, because right now I feel like I'm in this spot with my Davante Adams shares where I'm in a holding pattern. Not as bad as some of the wide receivers that we have in the NFL, but I would love to know sooner rather than later where he's going to go so that I can kind of like make some choices here, because he has not been the Davante. We didn't think he was going to be top 5 Davante Adams like we had seen in seasons past. But if he goes to Buffalo, I don't know. Like you said, he may be that guy that we have seen.
And this might be it, like his last shot at like a big elite finish to the season, because he's 32, right? I mean, how many 33, 34-year-old superstar receivers are we aware of? None that I can really think of in recent memory. Larry Fitzgerald, I guess, is probably the most recent one. So, and it was a lot of like short area guys, like possession slot receivers. He's not that.
All right, we're going
to Lazard, is he 32?
We'll continue to monitor this as it moves forward. Obviously, watching our timelines from Adam Schefter to see what news breaks. We'll see. Do you have any? Is there a sense on when this might get done? Is there a reason that could it happen this week? Could it happen next week? Is there?
I think it could happen in the next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't guarantee that, of course, but it's public. The player is so high profile that there are going to be a lot of teams calling, and this is a Raiders team that at some point, it's a different regime than the one that traded for him.
Yep.
Sort of like the pride, the stubbornness that you might feel if you're the one that executed the initial move is out the window. And Antonio Pierce is the kind of guy who values the kind of chemical balance of the locker room, right? That part has been very, very clear since the moment he became the head coach. You got to keep the guys happy. Heck, at the beginning of his tenure, he was keeping the guys happy by throwing the football to Davante 10 times a game. Remember that? Remember that the coaching change took place, and immediately Davante Adams was being just spoon-fed a million targets, it felt like. So I wouldn't be surprised if something gets done in the next week or so. There's just way too much notoriety surrounding the situation, way too many suitors, and the minute Davante Adams is healthy, he can help somebody, and there are some very desperate teams out there.
Absolutely. Is there a chance they're going to trade Max Crosby to my Detroit Lions as well? We'll give him a second.
I got a text from a friend who's a huge Jets fan, and he was saying, the rumors are starting to percolate on the internet that Max Crosby could be traded as well. As stunned as I would be if the Raiders traded Davante Adams to the Chiefs, I would be more stunned if they traded away Max Crosby. He's their franchise.
Why?
He's so good.
No, he's their franchise.
Wild.
I don't know. What's he there?
Yeah.
Top 3 best defensive player in the world.
And it's a premium position. It's not like you're trading like Chicago traded Roquan Smith. I mean, he's a great player, but it's not as premium of a position as edge rusher.
By all accounts, Max Crosby wants to be there. There are so many factors that I think make it incredibly unlikely that they would just hang up the phone if you called them about Max Crosby.
All right.
I would hope so.
Yeah. That's fair. We got one more wide receiver I'm going to ask you guys about that we got news on today. But first, I want you to take a look at the screen. For those of you not watching at home,
boy.
We got a colorblind test up on the screen.
I got it already.
There is no number. So it's what you see on the screen is a bunch of dots that are all different colors in a circle. And inside this circle, apparently, there is a number made up of different colored dots. I do not see a number in there.
Not at all. Really?
No.
See the number?
Yeah, 13.
You're joking.
It's 74.
Yeah.
Seriously?
It says 74.
There's no 74 in there. This is why I hate colorblind tests. I feel like everyone is just gaslighting me, and I'm not actually wrong, and you guys
gotta be
made
weird.
it up with the producers.
I do feel for you. That's
tough.
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
That's a weird one.
That's not great.
All
All
right.
right.
It took you that long to find out.
I know. I was 23 years old. My mother was like, this makes so much more sense. I looked like a crazy person in high school with all the outfits that you wore. All right. Malik Nabers. We got word from Jordan Renan this morning. Sent out a tweet at 8:10 a.m. Said, while Malik Nabers with a concussion seems like a long shot to be ready for Seattle, Devin Singletary told me he has a chance. Really, the guy we're honing in on here is Malik Nabers. Obviously, if he does not go this week, we're going to have to make some pivots at our wide receiver position. Mike, have you already pulled them out of projections when you heard news like this, or do you want to see a little bit more?
Yeah, because he tweeted this morning, so I was, on my way in doing stuff. Here.
Okay.
Drinking coffee, eating breakfast on my way in, but I'll do it after the show. But anyway, this is big. I mean, he has a 39% target share. If you look at all receivers that played at least 3 games this season, the next closest is Michael Pittman at 31%, which is, this is like peak Brandon Marshall. Like, he's the last guy I could think of that had a target share that pushed 40%. That's huge. So that opens up, again, we're pushing for half of the targets in this offense. And you know what? You look at the team now, you look at the roster, you're like, take away Saquon Barkley, and it's 20-23. I mean, it's the same. It's like the same situation. You're going to have Darius Slayton, back to Wan'Dale Robinson, who's been soaking up a ton of targets this year. Jalen Hyatt, who was a rookie last year. Theo Johnson is in for last year. It was basically Daniel Bellinger because Darren Waller was hurt for a chunk of the season. It's not great, and they're going to have to distribute the target. So, I mean, I don't see anyone here who I'm like, I got to plug in my lineup, even though 39% of the targets are gone. Darius Slayton, I guess, would be the guy you would consider. Maybe Jalen Hyatt if you're desperate, but I wouldn't trust really anyone here.
Yeah, just sort of boost the value, as we discussed a little bit yesterday, of Wan'Dale Robinson. So I don't think Jordan is saying anything definitively. We'll have a better feel for this today.
Yep.
If we don't see Malik Nabers practicing again today, let's just use some logic. And we're not Stephania. She reminds us all the time that concussions are nonlinear. But if you can't even practice on Thursday, it would take a very rapid recovery to get through the various stages of concussion protocol. Yep. By Sunday, they travel on Saturday across the country to Seattle. My guess is that we're going to have clarity on this at the latest by Saturday afternoon, but we could well have clarity on it by Friday morning or Friday afternoon when they give out their injury report. So it's a significant injury. Obviously, he's been as impactful as any player in fantasy football at the wide receiver spot so far this season, and there is not a great next man up beyond Wan'Dale Robinson. This is a big gap. I mean, this is a tough one. When you've already have 4 teams on a bye, I mean, this is as consequential as any player that's on a bye this week. We've got A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Saquon Barkley all on bye this week. This would be, to me, as a bigger absence than any of those guys, given how great he's been so far.
Yeah, I have a neighborhood league with Nabers, Barkley, and Dobbins, and that's been going great so far. But, I'm playing my neighbor who likes to talk a lot of smack, and not feeling great about my situation right now. It's going to be a tough one. Might have to plug in Trey Sermon to one of them spots. Maybe Zamir White. It's going to be rough. It's going to be a rough week.
Everyone to know that there is nothing worse than being in this seat and being in a neighborhood league and getting crushed by people who let you know over and over, aren't you supposed to be the expert? Because it's just what happens every single time.
I'm just getting my excuse out there for my loss.
Exactly.
I'm just getting out in front of it. Actually, it worked for you. Was that last week?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago when you were out the Juwan Jennings week. That was 2 weeks ago.
Let's go, people. You're talking about this right now?
Yeah, since that happened, how's your team look?
All right, so you guys famously remember the worst team that I've ever drafted in my entire life. 0-4 through the first 2 weeks. This is a league, 12 teams, where you play victory points. So the 6 highest scoring teams in the league each week get a win. The 6 lowest scoring teams in the league get a win on top of the head-to-head. So you could be the 3rd highest scoring team in the league that week, but lose to the highest scoring team in that week. But you would go 1-1 as opposed to 0-1. It's to sort of balance out outlier results,
and
right?
yes, you could do this in the ESPN game. You can set that feature up.
It's a great feature. We play in a lot of leagues that have this feature. We find it to be, I think it's just a more equitable way to kind of go through your season. Your boy is 4-0 for the past 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
Powered by a dominant squad. You see, what happened was I was a coach, and I was tapping into coach speak. I called him out publicly. I figured out who was a have and who was a have-not. Which one of you guys wants to be great and which one of you guys wants to be remembered for being booty cheeks. And we found out that this team's got mental toughness to respond, baby. 4-0. And you know what? Kind of like our odds again this week. Kind of like the squad. We don't even have Christian McCaffrey. TJ Hawkinson. Imagine how good this team will be when 2 of the best players are back on the roster. Let's go.
feel like we created a monster.
Yeah, this is the problem.
This is not good, guys.
We need him to take an L this week and just bring
him back to earth a little bit.
You guys did not want me to get hot, and I got hot.
Yeah.
But here's what happens. I'm
Me
now
too
4-4, which makes me. I think I'm now in 7th in the 12-team league.
This is why I stay level-headed, because he was too low 2 weeks ago. Now he's too high. You got no way.
Yeah.
He's gonna get too bold. He's like, you know what? I'm starting DJ Turner. I just have a feeling. I coached him up. Like, this is his
He had
week.
a rushing touchdown last week. That would have been sweet to start him with that.
That would have been sick. All right. We got a handful of segments we're getting into. We are going to start right now with our Week 5 gut check. Talking about some gut feelings we have on a handful of players in the Ravens and Bengals game is the first one where we're going to start. Let's talk about these tight ends. And
No, let's not.
Yes, we have to do
My gut doesn't feel good at all. I have bad gut health about the Ravens tight ends.
You know what, Mike? I'm the one that gets to complain about my gut health in this show.
I need a
After the hot sauce episode.
probiotic for.
The good thing is I do have every gut medicine available in my cabinet at home because of that one vaunted day that will never, ever, ever be forgotten.
You'll never
take
forget
all
it.
of it.
Much as I would like to forget it.
Ravens tight ends have scored 5 fantasy points between the two of them the last 2 weeks. In fact, all 5 of those points were scored by Isaiah Likely because Mark Andrews back-to-back goose eggs. How deep of a league do you need to be in, would you guys say, to start either one of these guys?
A 12-teamer that starts 2 tight ends, because I have him 23rd.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
50-team league. Yeah, I don't.
You're just out on both of these guys until you see the production on the field.
Let's just be very clear here one more time. The only people that can make a Mark Andrews start worthwhile are the Ravens play callers, right? It's not us. There's no number that I can point to that I can say, you know what, man, I just am convinced that this is you guys are missing these important things. He's not catching passes, but he's running all these routes, or he's got these great air yards, or his average depth of target. Yeah, he's playing minimally in the passing game. 0 catches over the past 2 weeks. And it's not even like so he's not a squeaky wheel. He's going to take the high road. He has been taking the high road here. But it's not even like the coach is saying yeah, you know something? We really got to get him going. We haven't had too many squeaky wheels so far this season. We had randomly Pop Douglas, and Gerard Mayo was like, you know what? We do have to get him the ball more. And he had 9 targets the following game.
And then none the next week?
But still. Anyways, we had that 1 week where the squeaky wheel did get the grease. There hasn't even been that. Mark Andrews, according to his coach, is playing great. He's doing the small things. This is the dirty work. He's the guy in basketball that sets the good screens and, tips passes and, hustles back on defense. It doesn't count in fantasy football. So if he goes off this weekend, it is nothing more than good fortune.
Yeah. Last 2 weeks, 7 Ravens have more targets. He's played 1 more snap than Charlie Kolar.
That includes Qadri Ismail, by the way. Yeah. He retired about a decade ago.
Rashad Perriman came back to get a target. And same thing, Isaiah Likely, the big week 1 since then, 6 targets, 4 catches, 56 yards, no touchdowns, 10% target share. The Bengals really good against tight ends this season. On top of everything else, no tight end has reached 40 yards or 9 fantasy points against them. But yeah, I want to, people just keep saying, oh, you don't know ball, it's just game script. Can I say BS on the show? Can I say that? Can I say that? Question. Can I say that whole word?
Effort to get you fired.
I want to.
Yeah, do it. Say it. But say the non-family friendly version.
Beep, beep.
Yeah.
Yes. There you go.
The bologna sandwich.
Yes.
Bologna
sandwich. There you go.
There it is. That's B and an S. Nonsense. He's not on the field. He's not running right. You can't win. You can't get a positive game script and get a lead without players catching passes and being targeted and scoring touchdowns. He's not even doing that. He's not part of the offense. So that's a nonsense argument. They've had great game scripts or run-friendly game scripts for a long time. And guess what? Andrews has been a superstar fantasy tight end. So all of that is moot. It's nonsense. It doesn't matter. Will he do better if they're trailing in games and they have to throw the ball? Maybe, but guess what? In week 1, that was Isaiah Likely. That wasn't Mark Andrews, so I don't know. I don't see how you start him.
Is there really a large cohort of people that are saying you don't know ball about Mark Andrews?
Commentary along the lines of what I just said, yes. It's all game script. It's just because they're winning game. You see that a lot. Yeah.
The internet is just this crazy spot. You know that? Some of these burner accounts never cease to amaze me.
Stop.
Yeah. Right? Apparently there's somebody. There's I know Browns fans know this. There's a guy, and Keith, if he's watching this, may be able to confirm if he's aware of this account, who some people think is either Deshaun Watson or somebody closely associated with Deshaun. Deshaun will throw a pick six right to the linebacker who's just the only person within 20 yards of the pass, and the person this account will be Man, I tell you what, that's another bad route by the wide receiver. Meanwhile, it was like a play with no wide receivers on the field. They'll be like, Jerry Jeudy just didn't do his job. It's like Jeudy was still on the Broncos at this point of the play. You're like, hold on now. Now, it's also possible that this person is just trolling. Like, they get it that, like, this kind of account would engage well.
Yeah.
So as much as I want to quit the internet, God, there are just some beautiful moments out there as well.
Yeah, there was like the famous, like, Jameis Winston one, right? Remember that one?
I do.
It was like Bucks fan or something like
that. Guy was great, though. He was Jameis one of one.
But just like aggressively everything Jameis Winston was so funny. So I'm with you. There's some good stuff out there, but there's also some of that. It's like, man.
It's so frustrating because if you told me that this was what Mark Andrews, like, route participation was going to look like, I'd be like, holy cow, we have now seen it. Isaiah Likely has finally come to fruition in this offense.
Good point.
But it's not even Isaiah Likely other than that first week. Like you just mentioned, did you say there's only been 6 targets for Isaiah Likely since that big week 1, Mike?
Yeah.
That's just
I saw some wild Isaiah Likely trades after week 1 because he was the only tight end that actually did anything. It's so funny looking back on those 3 weeks later.
Yeah, was it the FF Now League? I picked him. I got him on waivers, and then I dropped him, and then you added him, and then you dropped him this week. Like, we're just slowly. It's just that kind of thing.
That was like
and by the way, there are guys getting targets. Like Justice Hill has twice as many targets as Andrews does this season. Like he's getting a ton. He's a ton over the last couple of weeks.
It's brutal. All right. Let's talk about the running backs on the other side of this, guys. We got both Zach Moss and Chase Brown. We saw a ton of Chase Brown last week. It was a 60-40 split coming in. Weeks 1 through 3, it was 75-25. Very clearly the Zach Moss show. Was last week because they played a team that just cannot stop running backs and they couldn't give the ball to Zach Moss 40 times. Is that why Chase Brown got involved?
I think that's part of it, yes, because they did lean on those backs more than they have so far this season. Sort of interesting. The Bengals, sometimes you'll see snap percentages for 2 running backs, and the numbers either will come a little bit short of 100% or it will exceed 100% because you could have 2 backs in the field at the same time, right?
Yep.
The Bengals, every play this season, it's either been Zach Moss or Chase Brown. If you go back, it's 87% for Zach Moss, 13% for Chase Brown. 80% for Zach Moss, 20% for Chase Brown. This past week, it was 60-40. So certainly some signs of, some encouraging signs from Chase Brown. And I went back and, I watched the game and I was sort of programming this, but I went back and checked just to kind of double confirm the game book, just like when were these carries taking place?
I always look at that every week. Yeah, every team. Yep.
Of course, Mike does it for everyone.
It's important. You got to find out what. I'll give you an example of a person that's important in that category. In a second, go ahead.
But yeah, it wasn't like Chase Brown was in mop-up duty by any stretch. He started the game. He scored the opening touchdown for Cincinnati this past weekend. He was playing throughout the game. It felt like it was kind of like 2-1 or 2 to 1.5 in terms of series going to Zach Moss versus Chase Brown.
Yeah, a big change, I would say, in usage. I mean, Chase Brown had more carries this past week than he had in the season combined. And also, how about this? Take all running backs with 25-plus carries this season. Chase Brown leads the NFL in yards per carry at 6.3. So it's a small sample, but he's been effective. I mean, Zach Moss is at 3.9. So, again, that'll even out a little bit if they divvy it up a little differently. But there was signs that Brown was going to play more, and that's what we saw this past week. So, by the way, tough matchup here. Ravens 2.7 yards per carry is lowest in the NFL. 3rd fewest fantasy points to running backs. The only running back to reach 9 fantasy points against him this season was Isaiah Pacheco in week 1. So this is a tough matchup. I think if you can avoid these guys this week, you do that. I would give Moss a slight edge as a flex option. But the guy I wanted to use as an example is James Cook, because you guys may have noticed when you go in like to set the rankings and the projections are there, he probably seemed a little low this week because I adjusted starting Sunday as soon as the games end, and like his carry shares the last 3 weeks are like 42%, 44%, 46%. I'm like, that is really low. But if you look at the game logs, you're like, it's Ty Johnson taking the last 6 carries, and then Ray Davis takes the last 7 carries. Like, so, and then you adjust for that, and then suddenly like, okay, James Cook actually is getting a big bulk of the carries. It's just late in the game that he's resting. So
3
he's
straight
probably
blowouts for the
3 straight games. Yeah. So, and then I adjusted for that obviously, and Cook moved back up where he belongs in the rankings. And I do that every week. There's always guys I'm like, that doesn't look right. I have to look a little deeper into it. And sometimes it is like, wow, actually that guy should be low. Like Josh Jacobs, we've had lower Other guys, it's not, and I have to adjust for that.
Yeah, we've got Zach Moss as right around running back 20 this week, but I think a big part of that, because of the team that they're playing that you guys just mentioned in the Ravens, with the 4 teams on bye, you likely would have had Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in front of him. You would have had Saquon Barkley in front of him, potentially maybe Tony Pollard, maybe J.K. Dobbins. So he probably would have been closer to the RB25 or later range if it weren't for bye weeks, which is why we have him still up there in the RB20 spot. You may not like it, but you have to start him potentially this week, given what you have at the running back position. All right, let's talk some Dolphins and Patriots. Another gut check, guys. Feels like this one is mostly about Tyreek Hill and where you're at on whether or not you're okay with Tyreek Hill. If you bench him and he goes off, are you okay with that, or would you rather start him and get another 4.5 fantasy points? This is like the ultimate fantasy conundrum where you're in one of these spots.
No, it's not.
You don't think so?
Oh, I tell you what it is. It's whatever you do, the opposite will happen.
That's
right. It's like when you start him. I'm guaranteeing you, if you are the person, if you are the God control panelist who actually pulls the levers on what happens in fantasy football, if you start Tyreek Hill this weekend, he's going for 4.2 fantasy points.
That's it.
If you sit him, he's going to go for 21. I'm just telling you that's how it works. I tend to err on the side of caution and worry and pessimism here because I have him as wide receiver 27, lowest amongst the three of us. It's a non-functioning offense right now.
If you're the pessimist, Mike, are you the optimist on Tyreek Hill?
I'm a little higher, I guess. I mean, he did have a 33% target share last week, 7 targets. They tried to get him a carry here or there as well. That's enough for me to start. I still have him as fringe top 20. We know how explosive he is. We talked about this yesterday. If there's a short list of players who can hit for that 55-yard touchdown at any given point, and he's on that list. He will draw Christian Gonzalez shadow coverage, at least on the perimeter in this game. Gonzalez actually has moved into the slot a little bit this season. So I think he'll be on him quite a bit. And by the way, we were talking about this yesterday. So the stat lines of the receivers that Gonzalez has shadowed this season, Jamar Chase caught all 6 of his targets for 62 yards. DK Metcalf had that huge game, 10 for 129 and a touchdown. The long touchdown wasn't his fault. It was a miscommunication. Garrett Wilson scored the touchdown, 5 for 33 on 9 targets. And Brandon Ayuk last week, 2 for 48 on 5 targets. Kind of, mix and match. Gonzalez is playing well, but again, quarterbacks are still targeting these guys when he's on them. It's not a matchup that I'm like, it's not certain, but it's a notable matchup nonetheless. But again, I'm still going to start Tyreek Hill.
I have a good board bet here because it actually works out nicely. The space between myself and Mike is the same as the space between Daniel and Mike. Ooh. So I think what we should do is if Tyreek Hill, who Daniel has at wide receiver 17, is wide receiver 21 or better, you win. Okay. If he's wide receiver 23 or worse, I win. And if he's wide receiver 22, Mike wins.
That's perfect. Love it.
I don't take an L in this scenario.
No, you get the loss.
Yeah, you definitely get a loss unless it's 22.
No, I get 100 wins if I hit this one.
We can do that. We can wait it.
Just do it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So you want to say wide receiver? I mean, are you a part of this, Mike, or no?
Exclude Mike.
I'll do the usual. What's the usual rule? If it's a tie, it goes to the third party, right?
Yeah, fine. That's fine. So you can't lose, but you can win.
Yes.
All right. So the wide receiver 23 for me. 23 or higher?
You said 22 or better.
22. Okay.
Yeah.
So I say Tyreek Hill will be at least wide receiver 22 here in Week 5.
And I say Tyreek Hill will not be a top 22 wide receiver in Week 5. Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
Mike is here, looking pretty, occupying space, and potentially winning. That would be hilarious.
1% chance to win.
Why not?
I love that. If you start Jalen Waddle, do you have a 1% chance to win in fantasy football this week?
Mm-hmm.
Feels like
yes, you have exactly that chance to win.
Like this is the ultimate fade spot.
You and Mike are 12 spots apart on Jalen Waddle. Maybe another.
You're 38.
That. I don't mean. I think I need to go in and readjust my rankings because once I saw that on the screen,
53 to 41.
0 touchdowns, 47th in fantasy points this season.
He's such a good player.
Hasn't cleared 6 targets or 41 yards in a game this season. Since week 1.
Dang it. This team is way too good to be this boring.
I mean, that's sort of this is one of the most frustrating things because you look at everyone on this team. Like I'm doing what I can in spite of the fact it says wide receiver 41 on the rankings panel.
Whatever, ignore it for a
to
second.
not play Jalen Waddle if I can help it given that spot. But it feels like between him and Tyreek Hill and Davante Adams, there's too many good fantasy football assets to feel like we can't start anyone with confidence. And yet that's where we're at even with Davante Adams, given how things have worked out.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Davante Adams as running back 17. I said my piece yesterday. I am also worried about him. Raheem Mostert practiced in a limited capacity yesterday. Don't know whether he'll give it a go or not. Just sucks that, the Patriots are a bad offense. We know that.
Yes.
The Dolphins and the Patriots, the Dolphins played on Monday night like the Patriots do, right?
Mm-hmm. I would give the edge. If I was going to take this game, like I would take the Patriots because I think they're gritty defense.
I think it's a toss-up. I was just going to ask that question. I picked Miami, but it's close.
I know it's close. Yeah. Miami's favored by 1 on the road.
Yeah.
So, but you guys, we all still have Davante Adams inside the top 20, which makes him a start.
You got to start him.
However,
you don't have to feel good about it, Field.
You don't feel good. You don't have to feel good about it. That's correct. Are we so committed to Ramondre Stevenson that we're starting him this week? See the comments yesterday from Gerard Mayo?
I did, but again,
let's relay it. Hold on, yeah, let's relay it for those who didn't see it. According to the great Mike Reese, Gerard Mayo says it is definitely under consideration that running back Antonio Gibson starts over Ramondre Stevenson on Sunday after Stevenson has fumbled in each of the first 4 games.
That's not good.
Ramondre Stevenson followed up by saying, quote, "I'm super tough on myself. I'm more disappointed in myself than anyone could ever be. It's very simple. I just have to hold on to the ball and have that mentality to come up with the ball every time. It's my job to do that, and I haven't been doing it well," unquote. So, all right, there are 2 ways I think to interpret this. Mike, yours is a little bit more straightforward. So your interpretation of Gerard Mayo's comments was something to the effect of?
Yeah, it was just like a warning, like a threat almost. Like, hey, stop fumbling or you're going to be benched. And Stevenson understands that. And by the way, I don't think that fumbles are like, usually if a guy fumbles a few times, they usually get it corrected. In the end, these are NFL football players. It's rare that it's just a problem all season long. I mean, quarterbacks is a different story, but running backs, we've seen this before. They work on it all week, and then they find a way to adjust the ball or whatever it is, and then it's not a problem. So I think Stevenson is a smart enough and gifted enough player that he'll get this under control. I know I don't want to steal what you're about to say. I could see Gibson starting the game, but I'm not moving Stevenson much in my rankings. I think he'll play a big role. He's too good.
I did, because he's been disappointing on top of the fumbles recently. Past 2 games have been duds. I've got him down to RB 25. So 7 spots behind Daniel and 8 spots behind Mike. I am concerned. 4 straight games with the fumble. And the irony of it all, by the way, is that Antonio Gibson, the guy who has a known fumbling problem, is now going to start for the Patriots, potentially, I think, for this. I'm interpreting the comments yesterday as, at least to begin the game, it'll be Antonio Gibson for, if not the first couple of series, definitely to begin the game, and we'll see from there. It's just frustrating. Ramondre was great coming out of the gates this season, especially in that Cincinnati game where he got so much work. And this is a game on paper where you could get that same production from Ramondre, because I don't think, even if the Dolphins are a bit better on offense this week, they're going to run away with this game, which has been part of the problem over the past couple of games. The Patriots are getting embarrassed. It's like, why even bother running the ball, because we're down by 17 points at the end of the first quarter or something. So I'm concerned, man. It's a problem right now for Ramondre.
I feel like I'm still in that spot where, given the state of the running back position, the guys that are on bye, I still have to start them until I hear. I agree with Mike. I side more on this felt like a warning shot across the bow.
I need it to be that.
I'm hoping that's what it is.
Yeah. And keep in mind, he got a nice extension in the offseason. This is a guy there, he's not just like, we're going to move on from this. Like, he's going to be around for a while. He's their lead back. And by the way, just to your point.
Idea in the first place.
Well, nonetheless, I mean, also this, unlike the last couple of weeks, this should be a competitive game. Will you agree with that? They might win this game. It's a 1-point difference, and they could win. And if they're ahead, you would expect Stevenson to be busy.
You would.
This is a rare must-win for both teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miami has to hang in there for when Tua gets
If they
back.
win, they can say to themselves, Tua's coming around the corner, 1 more game without him, potentially 2-3. I don't know who they play after or before their bye. For New England, it's not like a must-win in the sense that I think they have playoff aspirations. I think it's more of a must-win if it's like, are we serious at all as a team right now? Because if we can't beat Miami 1-3 with no Tua, no backup quarterback, it's Snoop Huntley signed off the practice squad 2 weeks ago. Are we going to go 1-17?
There's at least a possibility, it feels like. And for fantasy managers, it's just, Ramondre Stevenson was the only startable fantasy asset on that Patriots offense that we were trusting. I get that you got Pop Douglas. Hunter Henry just turned in 1 good week and has been non-existent since.
Yeah, I almost feel like New England it's a rebuild year. I mean, trading away Judon, and then they won't play Drake May because they don't feel like they have the support system around him. If you thought,
I would love it if they did.
I want them to. I want to see him. Obviously, I think you put him in there, and hopefully he's a guy that can rise all tides. But they obviously don't feel that way yet. They seem to be so concerned with everybody around him. They're like, we're not even going to throw him into this right now.
Kendrick Bourne back at practice yesterday.
That'll help.
Deeper league, it's not like they're loaded at wide receiver, but you could intrigue me a bit with Drake May throwing to Kendrick Bourne, Pop Douglas, and of course Jalen Bogle.
All right,
a bit here.
Let's move ahead. Talk Jets and Vikings. Here's my question: Sam Darnold, 3 straight top 10 weeks at the quarterback position, taking on the Jets. Gut check time. Can you throw Sam Darnold in at your starting quarterback? Wow, no, Mike. Before
No, I don't
even
think
finish
so.
the question, it's a no.
I don't think so. He's been doing well the last couple of weeks. Leads the NFL in passing touchdowns this season. You like that? You like that camera?
Cool. That was a cool shot.
Big
But 20th in pass attempts so far this season. Only 50 rushing yards. It's going to limit him a little bit. But the key, of course, this week, if you're considering as a streamer, is the matchup. They're playing the New York Jets. Second fewest passing yards and fantasy points to quarterbacks. This is really interesting. They've been dominant for a while as a defense. Zero quarterbacks have cleared 11.5 fantasy points against them this season. None even reached 23 against the Jets all of last season. So think about your ceiling with Sam Darnold. Where's he getting? Is he going to be the first guy since 2022 to get 23 fantasy points against the Jets? That's probably what you want if you're streaming them. You hope you have that sort of upside. I can't imagine that he's the first guy to do that. So I'm out. I don't see him as a good streamer.
I think you need to, every time you get ready to say, I'm out, you need to make sure that you start it with. And for those reasons.
Yes, thank you. I was just thinking that.
Just as a suggestion.
All right, I'll work on that.
From the inbox.
References to all of their shows.
Yeah. All right. Well, what about the guys around him? Obviously, we're still starting Justin Jefferson. You're still starting Aaron Jones. But is Jordan Addison? Jordan Addison got in the end zone twice. Had a huge week last week, Yates.
But low volume here. Low volume. He had 3 catches last week. He had the rushing touchdown. So he turned 4 opportunities into 2 touchdowns. And I think you can just take a lot of what Mike said about how they have defended, meaning the Jets, opposing quarterbacks, and apply it to wide receivers.
Right.
I've got him as wide receiver 44, and for those reasons, I'm out.
I like it.
Well done.
See, that's how you do it.
Doesn't it roll off the tongue nicely, too?
It does. It sure does. It's so smooth and sharp. That was last week was his second best fantasy point total ever in a game that Justin Jefferson also played. And again, he had 4 targets in week 1, had 4 targets in this game. Not enough yet. So for those reasons, I am out.
Yes!
Love it.
Nailed it.
Nice job, Mike.
So proud of you.
Appreciate it. All right, what about the other side? Still starting Breece Hall. I mean, in spite of the dud that happened last week, he was a top 13 running back each of the previous 3 weeks. Like, let's pump the brakes on Breece Hall not being good at football.
He feels like the player who has generated the most anxiety for zero reason whatsoever.
I agree with that.
It seems like the one talking point that people are latched onto is the goal line work, and whether that will end up going more and more and more to Braylon Allen because Breece Hall did not convert in those 2 opportunities last Sunday against the Broncos. The Jets are saying all the right things. I would also say this. While I do believe, like, 1 carry, Super Bowl on the line, if you're going to run the football, you're going to run it with Braylon Allen or Breece Hall. I think you could probably side with Braylon Allen. I don't think this is like some major blind spot in Breece Hall's game. Beyond that, we're not talking about 1 carry, Super Bowl on the line. We're talking about a long season, and it's important. Like, you can't have this star running back do all the work to get you there and then just always hand the rock off to the other guy to finish the job.
To be fair, they want Breece Hall to be fresh when they're watching week 1 of the playoffs on the couch.
I want to hear that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Breece Hall own the NCAA, like the FBS record for most consecutive games with a touchdown?
I believe it's close. It might have been ETN who had Hall. No, you could be right. Hall, I think that's the record for Hall. Meanwhile, Travis Etienne has the most games with a touchdown scored.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so I remember him scoring in every single game till he left for the NFL. Look, he had 20-plus touches and a touchdown in 3 straight games to open the season before the dud last week. So not worried about this. He leads all running backs in targets, and he's 8th in carries inside the 5, so he's getting goal line work. Minnesota really good against running backs so far. They haven't faced much volume because they've been ahead in games. If we expect this to be competitive, you would expect a little bit more out of Breece Hall. But worst case, if they're trailing, they're going to throw it to him a lot.
How much of this is about Breece Hall, and how much is this just about, like, no one expected Braylon Allen to actually come in and have any kind of a actual?
But the volume with Hall is great. He's 15th in carries. He's 1st in targets. He's getting goal line work. Like, he had really 3 good weeks. It's just one dud game. I mean, and Allen's playing 1/3 of the snaps. Did we expect Hall to play 90% of the snaps? I didn't. I thought 70% or so, and that's about where he is. So it hurts the stock a little bit. It cost him a few touches, maybe occasional touchdown, but Hall, by all accounts, is in a good spot.
All right, you're making me feel a lot better about Breece Hall. Hopefully everyone is listening about that. What about Garrett Wilson, though? Because I still
want to talk about him.
Go for it, Mike. Have at it. I'm letting Mike take this one. I'm taking the segment off.
I dug in a little bit on him. Top 12 at receiver and snaps, routes, targets, 8.2 targets per game. Fine numbers, 5 or 6 touches in all 4 games. Not bad. Hasn't gotten over 62 yards. The chemistry hasn't been there just yet. But check out his schedule so far. I don't know if we've really considered enough. It's only been 4 weeks, right? Pretty small sample.
Okay.
Open up against the 49ers, one of the best defenses in the NFL.
defense.
They haven't been dominant against receivers this season, but that is a really good defense.
Yep.
Okay.
Then he's shadowed by L'Jarius Sneed and the Titans. The Titans, by the way, have allowed the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers this season and 0 touchdowns. No receiver has even hit 12 fantasy points against them, so they've been exceptional against that position. Then he's shadowed by Christian Gonzalez. Last week, shadowed by Patrick Surtain. That's brutal. I mean, who has had it tougher than Garrett Wilson, opponent-wise? Sneed, Gonzalez, and Surtain, and the Niners?
I just thought of something. You know how the Harbaughs famously do that? Who's got it better than us? Nobody. We need Mike to I need somebody on the internet to do this and superimpose Mike Clay's face onto a Harbaugh.
I like this. Everyone,
You don't want this?
I said no one wants this.
Everyone
Maybe
wants
Garrett Wilson's face on top of a Harbaugh. And then on the bottom fonted, who's had it tougher than us? Nobody.
Hey, whatever it takes to get everyone back on board. Yeah, look. By the way, he's gonna have Ramsey here or there. Maybe Ramsey doesn't always shadow Gonzalez one more time this season. He has a couple matchups like that, but the schedule is definitely a lot easier moving forward. It's not great the next month, but it definitely lightens up. And the fantasy playoff schedules looks really good for him. I believe it's like
Gonna lighten
Arizona
up just
and
in
Indy,
time
something
for
like
Davante
that.
Adams' arrival.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that would be your largest concern if that trade happens. But again, I take some solace in that as someone who's a fan of Garrett Wilson and thought he would have a big season. But the schedule's been brutal. It's going to lighten up. I think better days ahead. And if they're trailing in this game against Minnesota, I mean, they've allowed a ton to receivers so far because they face so much volume. So maybe this week he gets rolling a little bit.
London game.
Still a starter. In spite of how bad it's been the last couple of weeks, he's
Wide
still a
receiver
starter.
23 for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a ton actionable there from that standpoint, but there's a lot of panic about Garrett Wilson. We've talked about it on this show.
Yep.
I take some solace knowing that has been a brutal, brutal start to the season, schedule-wise.
All right, let's dive into some Week 5 start-sit questions. We're going to start with Rico Dowdle. Do you want the good news on Rico Dowdle?
Scored a touchdown last week.
That's basically
Technically, it's
it.
top to depth chart.
That's about it. Yes. Leads the Dallas backfield, right? More rushing yards, more rushing attempts, more targets, more receptions, more receiving yards, more yards before and after first contact than anyone else in that Dallas backfield.
That is the lowest possible bar.
I know. Well, that's why I said the good news, Mike. It's the good news.
Subjective, but still good news.
The bad news is he's just in a 3-headed committee with Zeke and
Oh, really, too, but yeah.
What? Sure. Okay. But I feel like, what's his name? Lepke?
Hunter
Oh,
Lepke.
yeah.
Lepke.
I thought you were talking about Deuce Vaughn.
No. Hunter Lepke's getting more touches. He's out on the field more than Ezekiel Elliott is.
Mike McCarthy loves him. That is
does.
a Western Pennsylvania football player in a nutshell.
Uh-huh.
Lepke is not actually from Western PA, but Western PA known for its
It's
toughness.
in his blood.
Lepke's a former North Dakota State fullback who was sweet in college and now has carved out a decent role in the pros.
He is straight up, though, in a timeshare, Rico Dowdle is, and now he's taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have allowed the second fewest fantasy points to running backs. Even though we just talked about with Zach Moss, the reason why we have him at top 20 is because of all those running backs that are on bye this week. I still don't feel confident in Rico Dowdle, and he would be a sit for me this week if I can help it.
Brutal matchup against the Steelers, too, here. Yeah, he's one of them guys even. I have Dowdle in the FF Now league, and, he's playing enough. Technically, if it's a number 1 running back on a depth chart, you're like, guy should be rostered in a 12-team league. But I'm still why am I rostering him? He's the guy I want to cut because he's not winning me my league. Why? So, I don't know. Just so you know, he might be on waivers soon in that league. Be ready. It might happen.
I've got him as a sit. Would you guys also view him as a sit this week if you had to?
Probably is every week, but especially against Pittsburgh.
Okay, yeah. I was trying to be nice about it, Mike. All right, let's talk about Keon Coleman. I mean, we brought him up just a little bit earlier on in the show, Field Yates. Is there a chance that with Keon Coleman and his 11 targets this season that we're going to see things change this week? You said there might be some reason for some optimism.
That's correct. If Khalil Shakir, who missed practice on Wednesday, is out, stock up for Keon Coleman, who played 73% of the snaps in Week 4. Now, game script helped, right? They were getting their booties kicked. On top of that, Shakir was kind of in and out of the lineup for that game because of that ankle injury. But if Shakir is out, and again, he did not practice on Wednesday, I don't think they have a choice. They have to play Keon Coleman more. He's a talented player, and he's getting some high-octane targets too, right? Designing plays to get him open in the red zone is important to me. So I would consider him. He is still ranked right now as if Shakir is going to play. But if Khalil Shakir is out, and you're desperate, in a week with 4 teams on a bye, and potentially having players like Malik Nabers unavailable, I think Keon Coleman could creep inside that, top 35 for wide receiver.
Yeah, kind of fascinating. Hasn't really had a good game yet in terms of volume. Again, they haven't had to throw the ball a ton.
Yeah.
They've leaned on the run, and they've been winning by a lot. I was worried about him because he was essentially benched for a quarter or so 2 weeks ago for being late for a meeting.
Yep.
And then I was like, it might take him kind of a while to earn back that playing time. It did not. He actually led all their skill position players, including the tight ends and running backs, in snaps and air yards last week. So right back in as essentially the number one, really, in terms of his playing time. So that's a really good sign for the future. But you're right. I don't think he hasn't had a big game, right? Like he had 51 yards and 4 targets in that game. That matches his best for the season. So not a weekly starter yet, but one of them guys you want on your bench. And you're right, if Shakir's out, a little more appealing.
We'll talk about this more. But Stephon Diggs' revenge game this weekend.
That's right. Yeah, that would be fun. That would be a fun one to be able to watch. All right, let's talk about Amari Cooper.
Is he going to be a Brown by the end of the season?
What do you think? What's the implications here? The cap.
I'm thinking. They restructured his contract to begin the season when they gave him those incentives. So what's interesting about Amari Cooper is that an acquiring team would owe him the prorated version of $1.21 million. So basically nothing, right?
It's all incentive laden, is what you're saying.
Well, it's all been kicked. The can has been kicked. The Browns turned it into a signing bonus, which means they would take on a lot of dead money.
That's so weird. They've been doing really well with contracts lately, too, so I'm surprised.
This is how the Browns operate. They will kick every contract as much as they possibly can. We can save that for a different conversation, but yes.
That's fair.
I don't know whether he'll be a Brown by the end of the season. There is frustration mounting there. He let his team down last week. All that being said, still seeing a decent number of targets in a pretty darn good matchup here, Mike.
Yeah, at least 8 targets in every game so far this season. So they are trying to get him the football. Funny enough, he's only been over 35 yards and 7.5 fantasy points one time, just that one game, despite all of this heavy volume. But yeah, Washington most touchdowns with 10 already allowed to receivers in 4 games this season. Evans, Godwin, Chase, Nabers, all at 22+ against Washington. And he could draw Ben St. Juste shadow treatment in this game. He shadowed twice this season. Mike Evans, 5 catches on 5 targets for 61 yards and 2 touchdowns. Marvin Harrison Jr. Caught 5 of 6 for 45 yards and a touchdown as well. It's 3 touchdowns in those 2 games. So it is a really, really good spot for Cooper. 25th on my board. You could go even higher if you want. Definitely should be in lineups.
I have him as a start this week. I was shocked when I was looking. I guess I wasn't that shocked, but I was still mildly shocked when I was looking through reception percentage for wide receivers in the NFL. There's only one other wide receiver that has a lower reception percentage, given the fact that Amari Cooper has 37 targets and only 16 catches.
Is there a minimum qualifier, like how many targets they've seen so far?
There may have been.
I'm sure there has.
I'm
sure there's a 0 for 1.
It was not Harrison.
He's down there, though.
A
lot of deep shots.
I'm thinking like a vertical shot, too. Is it not Rashid Shaheed?
It is
not
not
Khalil
Rashid Shaheed.
Shakir.
Nope.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling?
It is not Marquez Valdez-Scantling. It's Cortland Sutton.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah,
Cortland Sutton with Bo Nix under center. And there's a lot of, obviously, like Bo Nix and Deshaun Watson have both really struggled passing the ball, unfortunately, this year. But not been great. Still, this is a week that, given that matchup, everything you just said about the Commanders, if you're going to start them, this is a week that you're starting him always against the Washington Commanders.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Javonte Williams, speaking of matchups that you enjoy, Raiders have given up at least 15 fantasy points to a running back in every single game.
They'll lead back
season.
in every game so far. Has 15+ fantasy.
So does this mean we're finally going to see Javonte Williams unlocked?
We did last week, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to see. Yes, last week he was the guy. I just have trust issues right now with the entire backfield. Right?
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
That's the thing, is that like he is supposedly the lead back, but I'm also bracing for like snap one. Hey, here comes Jaleel McLaughlin out of the backfield, So I'm a little bit lower than you guys as running back 28.
Yeah, I picked up Estime on a few teams, throw him on the IR because, I mean, they're still, like, Tyler Bidet might have led the backfield in snaps last week had he not had that injury. But Estime is eligible to return after he played in week 1, so after this game. And who knows, he might get an immediate look.
I don't know how you have a roster that doesn't have the IR slot that's already filled, where it was just open for you to add Audric Estime. Every single one of my fantasy teams has not only someone in the IR spot, but another guy that's hurt that I can't even put in an IR slot.
Yeah. I have some of my leagues that I run have extra spots. I use a few because of that reason. Like starting with like the COVID year, it was like we needed more spots, and I just left them because I don't feel like penalizing players because their team's all beat up.
How many is too many? Because, like, I feel like people, I'll say this.
I think 3's fine.
People get upset And they're like, you know what? You're cheating the system by leaving a guy on IR that is no longer on IR, but you can still make lineup moves. So like people get upset and they want to limit the number of IR spots.
I like 2.
I like 2. That's what I was going to say.
Fine
2
with
is
that.
reasonable.
I'm fine with 2. I've done 3 and others as well. I'm
2
fine.
seems like a good number, especially this year, because, man,
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you have Christian McCaffrey, you have no wiggle room for your IR spot otherwise.
By the way, I like the aspect of gamesmanship to an extent. So, like, if someone's like, you know what, I'm bored here on a Wednesday night. This is what I do. I'm like, let's see who's IR eligible and be like, oh, Estime's out there. Interesting. I have an open IR spot. I'll add him, put him on IR. Like, I'm fine with that. That's like you're putting time in. You're working on your team. You're looking for that little edge. I have no issue with that. That's gamesmanship. It's part of the process.
You have the most fun life. When you're done with your Tre Tucker group texts to Field, you're like, you know what, let me go into the waiver wire.
This is our life. This is what we do. I'm not complaining at all.
Chose us. We did not choose it.
That's the fun of the game, because if he hits now and he has 150 carries from week 6 on or whatever, to be like, look at that. That was a savvy move right there.
You know what? I did the exact same thing with Kareem Hunt a couple weeks ago, and right now
did.
it is paying off, to be honest. I mean, he is
100%
looking like
night. That's right. Yeah.
be back, so we'll see how that works. Speaking of Tre Tucker, though, we had mentioned this yesterday. In case you did not listen to yesterday's show and listen to the Diamond in the Rough segment that we had, Tre Tucker, with no Davante Adams, at least creeps into the idea of not only should he be rostered, but could you maybe consider starting him here this week, Field Yates?
I think he's going to move on up the rankings. Mike and I have accounted for Davante Adams' absence. We both have him. I said earlier, I thought around like wide receiver 40. I'm a little lower than that, wide receiver 45. But he's a good player and not going to probably draw the Patrick Surtain shadow, as Mike referenced earlier. So
Deeper leagues.
On the
I'll
radar.
see some Riley Moss probably on the other side. But yeah, he has 16 targets over the last 2 games. One of them was a game that Adams played. I think did he leave that one early, I think?
Nope.
Or no,
He got
he
hurt
didn't.
during
That was just a game where they were trailing and throwing a lot. So yeah, I like him as a player. Just a sneaky 3rd rounder from last year, coming into his own this year. And speaking of just being nerdy, watching preseason games, like he just looked good in the preseason. They had a good connection there.
Not starting him in just a standard 10 or 12 team league, but if you start 3 wide receivers and 2 flexes, or if you got an extra deep league because of that, like he's someone you could look at.
I think I don't play in enough just like standard 10-team leagues anymore, right? Because I'm like, yeah, Tre Tucker. And then I'm like, wait. In that league where it's like I'm choosing whether to start like Jaden Reed or DK Metcalf, like obviously I'm not going to be thinking about Tre Tucker. I'm joking. To be clear, I don't have a league where I'm choosing between DK Metcalf and Jaden Reed.
We do.
Yes, we do.
We have no running backs, but
We got a
We're like
great wide receivers.
You guys get the point.
Reed or JSN, I think, is our debate this week.
I feel like and Mike still does not want me to start Jaden Reed in spite of the fact that
I do.
weeks with then it shouldn't even be a consideration. It should be a lock.
No, I'm saying, but okay, so he's locked in, but then it's JSN or Pickens.
George
We have Olave. We have Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
You got to pick 4 of them 5.
Brag. Go ahead, keep bragging.
Yeah, we got Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson.
And stressing. Yeah, well, again, we have Kyle Pitts at tight end and no running. Devin Singletary is
Richardson bandwagon yet. Don't do it. You'll thank me later.
Don't do it. All right.
Don't do it.
All right.
Don't do it. I'm just telling you.
Speaking of Kyle Pitts,
Oh no.
let's do a Thursday Night Football preview, my friends. Buccaneers at Falcons. Couple of big conversations here. Listen, in spite of how difficult it has been for Bijan Robinson, don't take him out of your starting lineup. Let's just think of this.
No, same as Breece Hall. One bad game. He was
game.
cruising those first 3. Maybe not that first overall pick value we were kind of hoping to get, but it could still happen.
And the good news is it's not like the player who went just behind him was the right pick, right? It's not like you were choosing between Bijan and like, I don't know, whatever. It wasn't like Kamara versus Bijan was the debate between like pick 3 and pick 4, right? It was an appropriate selection given how things have played out so far.
Correct.
Relative to other options you would have viably considered.
So when we're looking at these pass catchers, the question is, Drake London, we talked about him a little bit yesterday. Obviously, this is a really great matchup for him. Fields, you mentioned that his targets as well are kind of going up in this.
Trending up, 21 over the past 2 weeks, 28 over the past 3 weeks for Drake London, a touchdown in 2 of those 3 games, building a better rapport with Kirk Cousins. By the week, they're throwing the football a lot. It's a good matchup against the Buccaneers too, Mike.
Well, I mean, Bucks have been pretty good. I mean, 5.5 yards per target to receiver, second lowest.
Okay, the context. I think it's a good. Maybe I should have asked the person who doesn't have the numbers. The person who, like the talent of the Bucks secondary does not scare me.
Yeah, I agree with that. But
they played very low volume passing offense.
Yeah, they haven't had Winfield, but
Broncos,
still
the
kind
Commanders.
of flowed. Yeah, they've. But I mean, efficiency wise, they've
the
done
Eagles
pretty
with
good.
no Devontae Smith, no AJ Brown.
Sometimes there's situations like that where I'm like, okay, I don't think this team's gonna be very good because you look at them on paper, and they also haven't had Winfield, who's gonna be out for this game, and it's still like, wow, they haven't really allowed much efficiency wise
I
or volume.
retract asking Mike that question.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you that this Buck secondary does not scare me.
All right, sorry.
Not scaring me.
Sorry for having numbers. Okay.
Yeah, okay, fine. When they play nobody, they're good.
This is
when they
great
play me.
because you both have him as wide receiver 12. We're just talking about the semantics of the situation.
No, I mean, I know that's the funny thing. Like, I agree on London. I mean, his targets have literally gone up every single game so far this season. 12 targets last week was matched a career high. He didn't have a 12-target game all of last season, so he's definitely in a good spot. So I'm with you. 6 catches in 3 straight games, 2 touchdowns you mentioned. So yeah, I'm in on him.
Is the tight end position now at a point where we can say no to Kyle Pitts, or do you think that given where we're at with the tight end position, Mike, that you still have to start Kyle Pitts just given how bad it's been?
Yeah, exactly 3 targets in 3 of 4 games. He had the top 12 in week 1 because no one else showed up at tight end.
3 catches.
Yeah, exactly. No top 12 since that point. Actually, last week he had 0 catches, which just surprised me a little bit, but that was the first game he ever went without a catch. Wow. He had at least one in every game in his career until that one. By the way, this is probably the most concerning thing. 65% of snaps, 61% route participation, 9% target share. All are career lows. All of them. So playing time is down. Usage is down.
9% target
9% target share this season. Brutal.
On top of it all,
and
I'm just going to say this. I know Mike would disagree. But again, his brain works differently than mine. I'm just here to tell you, me, the man of the people, is telling you this. You start Kyle Pitts tonight and he sucks again, it's going to be the longest 3 days of your life coming up. Friday, Saturday, until the end, the games begin on Sunday are going to suck. I've been there. I had me some Devin Singletary last Thursday night and Ramondre the Thursday night before that. Those guys combined for 5.1 fantasy points. It's a deep league, people. I get it. 5.1. Let me tell you, Friday and Saturday, I was a basket case. You know why? Because I have the emotional maturity level of a child somewhere in between the age of my 2.5-year-old and my 1-year-old. That's how emotionally mature I am.
Kate Otten or Kyle Pitts? What do you got?
Kate Otten.
Yeah, he's been rolling.
I'm not joking.
Yeah. No, I think I have Otten a spot ahead. Yeah.
I say Kyle Pitts gets in the end zone here in week 5.
Ooh, bold. I like it.
Why? What's your...
Because just like Field said earlier in the show with Tyreek Hill,
Murphy's Law,
when you decide you're finally out on Kyle Pitts is the week that he shows you just enough to pull you back in for another 2 to 3 weeks of misery after this game. That's why.
You see, well, first of all, his coach, Raheem Morris, said, the usual stats are for losers sort of thing.
No, I'm trying to get Raheem hired to the podcast. I would love a guy that thinks stats are for losers.
But did you see the Jason Kelsey rant about it?
No.
About that. He went this whole thing and go back. They were talked about that, about the stats are for losers. He went this whole thing about, stats are for, people zits and losers and nerds. They went on and on and on. At the end, he's like, you know what, though? Kyle Pitts is really good. They should probably get his stats better. Like, so good. It was such a good.
True.
And like a lot of people just watched the beginning and thought he was just doing the usual like that.
So
It was
good.
a bit, and at the end, he's like, oh yeah, actually,
Actually, he should.
it's just like a freak. Like, let's get his stats higher. So good.
Doesn't feel good, but I just want everyone to be able to tweet at me at Daniel Dopp. When Kyle Pitts does score a touchdown, make sure you include @Field Yates in that as well.
Yeah, mostly, but I will give you your flowers 100% if he scores a touchdown. It has to be before like 9:15, which is usually when I fall asleep during the game.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah. Mike gives me no credit when I have great tweets at the end of primetime games. He's never like, oh, nice one right there. He just ignores them.
Those are bots. He has a team. That's what it is. He has a team that hires that automates tweets, so it sounds like I'm awake. It just says I'm awake. That's it.
On the other side of this with the Bucs, you're starting both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. It's really the running backs that we're having this conversation about.
Boy.
Are you guys ready, like I am, to say that Bucky Irving should be ranked ahead of Rachaad White, or are you still in on the Rachaad White bandwagon?
I'm on Rachaad White bandwagon for now. But it's losing some momentum for sure. It's closing the gap. Yeah.
Yeah, the gap was closer than it's been all season. Last week it was 14 snaps. It was still an edge to Rachaad White, who played better. So the Bucs have decided White is still the guy, the 1A to the 1B, so we have to go the same way in fantasy for now.
I disagree with you guys. I again would say
you have Irving ranked ahead of.
I do.
Okay.
I do. I just think he just clearly looks like a better running back. His yards per carry, yard per touches, there is the juice that Rachaad White just does not have.
As a runner, I would agree.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that looking at it.
So
watching the tape, yeah.
I don't really want to start either one of them this week if I can help it. But if I had to choose one again, I would say that I would take Bucky Irving.
Yeah, they. By the way, Falcons have been pretty good against running backs. They've already faced Kamara and Barkley, 2 of maybe the 1-2 running back in fantasy. They both got to 17 points, but no one else has gotten to 9. So I mean, to contain them guys, like to be top 10 in fantasy points allowed to running backs. Having faced those 2 guys, pretty good job.
Pretty good.
All right, we got a fantasy focus parlay for while you're watching this game at home from the ESPN bet friends over here. We're talking Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Drake London to combine for 3 or more touchdowns. We're looking for 3 touchdowns.
Evans might do that himself.
That's right. That's part of why you like this one. Hopefully Drake London can get in the end zone with some of that increased volume. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin have been looking pretty nice this week. Odds were plus 400. They are now plus 475. Head on over to ESPN Bet if you want to make this parlay.
Who's winning this one? This is a tough one to pick. There's one of the, every week there's a few hard ones.
Ooh.
I'm going to take
Atlanta.
Baker Mayfield in the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Bucks for me.
Yeah, I'm going Falcons.
Thank
I
you.
think they get it done.
If it was going to be you. I was
They get it done at home.
that.
I think that's the tiebreaker. In Tampa, I probably take the Bucks, but it's a big one. Big one for the Falcons here.
Big one. Yep.
Yeah. I really feel like this is one of those games where we're going to finally see some of the stuff that we've been hoping for. Drake London, I want to continue to see that target share. I want to get that stuff happening. I do want to see these running backs. For me, I want to see Bucky Irving finally just take control of this backfield.
So Mike said that Mike Evans could get to 3 touchdowns by himself tonight. What if Drake London steals his thunder and goes for 3 himself tonight?
How nice would that be?
Could happen. I don't know, but all I'll say is I hope that one hits because that's a lot of touchdowns. That's what we want. We want to see Evans and Godwin and London scoring. We want Pitts in the end zone. We want Bijan. Maybe they could design some plays like the Lions and have like Bijan throw it to London or Pitts so everyone gets in on the action.
Like that.
Real talk. Were you guys in and out with the producers and there wasn't really a number in that colorblind test? Let's throw another one up here just to make sure that you guys weren't like kidding me here. If we throw up one more colorblind test.
I see it.
Sick.
What do you immediately say I see it? There's nothing but dots in there.
Mark Martin, number 6.
That's
blue
not
and,
true.
Blue and red, or
Not only is it a 6, but it's sort of angled a little bit to the right.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Is it really? Guys, I feel less than right now. My eyes, you know what? I guess my brain just makes up for the things that my eyes don't.
We should get you some colorblind contacts.
You know what? That'd be one of those. I don't know if I could do contacts. Do you wear contacts?
I do.
Not.
I don't know if I could do the touch my eye thing. Like, I'm not one of those.
It's not that bad. I remember when I first got them, I could not get them in. It was like just brutal. Like it's just so. It took me forever the first couple times to put them in, but once you get used to it, it's easy.
All right, I would be better with glasses, but like we can at least consider because I don't need the actual like prescription part of the contacts. So I don't know. Shout out to Enchroma. Maybe we can make that happen. You know, hit me up.
Okay.
Let a guy see finally.
Have your people call his people
exactly
to make this happen.
It's going to be another fun show tomorrow, guys. Obviously, Stefania Bell is going to be here to make sure that we have everything we need heading into the weekend from an injury perspective, as well as a bunch more of these game previews, part 2 of our game preview, as well as a Thursday Night Football recap. But for today's show is presented by Boost Mobile. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself, even people like Mike Clay. We love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
Rude.
You're in the 06,